She knew. Not clearly, not in words she could have said out loud to anyone at the time. But somewhere underneath the dress and the flowers and the relief of having arrived at the thing she was supposed to want, she knew that something was not entirely right. I want to talk about that today, about the thing women know before they say yes, and why they say yes anyway, and what 20 or 30 years of a life built on that quiet unease eventually teaches them. I am going to tell you about a woman I will call Helen. She is 61. She was married for 28 years. She has been divorced for 3. And recently, when we were talking about something else entirely, she said something that stopped me. She said, I think I knew on the morning of my wedding. She did not mean she knew the marriage would fail. She did not mean she did not love him. What she meant was something more complicated and more honest than either of those things. She meant that on the morning of her wedding, at 33 years old, there was a quiet voice somewhere inside her saying, "This is not quite right." And she had looked at that voice and she had said, "Not now." And then she had walked down the aisle. The first thing I want to say is about what that knowing actually is, because I think it is misunderstood. It is not a premonition. It is not a psychic sense that the marriage will end badly. It is not a warning about the person you are marrying, though sometimes it is that too. What it is, most of the time, is a recognition, a quiet recognition that you are saying yes for reasons that have as much to do with where you are in your life as with who he actually is. Helen said, I was 33. My friends were married. My mother asked about it every time I saw her. I had been with him for 4 years, and he was kind and reliable, and he wanted a family, and I wanted a family, and it all made sense. On paper, it made complete sense. She said, I think what I knew, without having the words for it, was that I was choosing a life, not him specifically. A life, the life he represented. And I was choosing it because I was ready for that life. And he was there and he was good enough and I loved him in the way you can love someone when you have not yet loved someone who makes you certain. That distinction between a love that is good enough and a love that makes you certain is one I have heard women name in their 50s and 60s that they could not have named in their 30s. They did not have the reference point. They did not know what certain felt like. And so they chose well enough. And then they lived inside that choice for 20 or 30 years. And by the end, they understood the difference from the inside. The second thing I want to say is about why they stayed. Because this is the part that women sometimes find hard to explain to themselves and to others. Why, if you knew something was not quite right, did you not leave earlier? Why did it take 28 years? Helen said, it was not a bad marriage. That is the part that is hardest to explain. He was not cruel. He was not unfaithful. He worked hard and he was a good father, and there were years, many years, where I was genuinely happy in the way that a full life makes you happy. The children, the house, the friendships we had together, the particular comfort of a life that is established and known. She said, what I would call it now is that I was happy with the life. I was less certain about him. But the life was very real, and I loved the life, and for a long time that was enough. I think this is more common than people admit. The marriage was not a mistake in the sense of being a disaster. It was a mistake in the more ordinary, more human sense of being a choice made with incomplete information about herself, about what she needed, about what love was capable of feeling like. Most of us make those choices. We make them because we are young and we do not know yet what we do not know. And then we spend years learning it from the inside. I want to be careful here to say something clearly. Staying was not weakness. Staying for 28 years in a marriage that was not bad, that had real warmth and real life in it, was not a failure of courage or self-awareness. It was a human response to a human situation. Most of us, given a life that is working well enough, do not blow it apart on behalf of a voice we cannot quite name. We manage the voice. We find ways to make the life comfortable, and we pour ourselves into it, and we love what is lovable about it. That is not foolishness. That is what people do. What changed for Helen in her late 50s was not a dramatic event. There was no affair, no crisis, no single moment of rupture. What changed was quieter than that. She said, I started to understand what I had needed all along that I had not been getting. Not because he was withholding it, he did not know to give it, but because I had never asked for it clearly, because I had not known clearly what it was. She said, we had spent 28 years being kind to each other without ever quite reaching each other. And at 59, I understood that this was not going to change. Not because either of us was unwilling, but because we had been slightly wrong for each other from the beginning in a way that 28 years of kindness had not fixed and was not going to fix. The third thing I want to say is about what those 28 years taught her, because this is the part I think matters most. Helen does not regret her marriage. She is clear about that. She does not regret the years or the children or the life she built. What she regrets, if that is even the right word, and she is not sure it is the version of herself who did not know how to ask for what she needed, who chose a life that made sense rather than a love that felt true, who quieted the voice on the morning of her wedding and walked down the aisle and told herself that this was just nerves, just the ordinary fear of a big day. What she knows now, at 61, is this. That voice was not nerves. It was information. And she wishes she had known, at 33, how to listen to it. Not because listening to it would necessarily have led her somewhere better. She does not know that. The counterfactuals are unknowable. What she knows is that she would have made the choice more honestly. She would have said, I am choosing this because of where I am in my life and because he is good and because I want a family, and this is the choice I am making. She would have owned the choice as a choice rather than disguising it as certainty she did not feel. She said, I think if I had been honest with myself, the outcome might have been the same. I might have married him anyway, but I would have gone in with my eyes open. And there is something in that, in choosing clearly, even when what you choose is imperfect, that I think would have made the 28 years different. Not necessarily better in every way, but different in ways that matter. I want to say something to you. If any of this is landing, if you are in a marriage that is not bad, but is not quite right, I am not telling you to leave. I am not qualified to tell you that, and I would not if I were. What I am saying is this. The voice that speaks quietly underneath the surface of a comfortable life is worth listening to. Not because it is always right, but because it is always saying something. And the cost of not listening, of telling it not now and walking on, is that you spend years making decisions from an incomplete understanding of what you actually need. Helen said something to me recently that I have thought about many times since. She said, I did not know myself well enough to marry well. And I think most people marry before they know themselves well enough. The question is what you do with the knowing when it finally comes. She is doing something with it now. She lives alone for the first time in her life at 61. And she said, it turns out I am very good at being alone. She said, I did not know that about myself. I had been afraid of it my whole adult life, and it turns out it is one of the things I am best at. She also said something that surprised me. She said she is not angry, not at him, not at herself, not at the 33-year-old who quieted a voice she should have listened to. She said she was doing the best she could with what she knew. We all are. The problem was not that she made a wrong choice. The problem was that she did not make it clearly, that she let the noise of what she was supposed to want drown out the quieter signal of what she actually needed. She said, I would like younger women to understand that the voice is real, that the quiet unease before a big decision is not weakness and not nerves and not something to be managed. It is information. The most important information you have. And the earlier you learn to listen to it, the less it costs you. That kind of knowing, the knowing that comes from the inside of a long life, honestly examined, is worth something. It is, perhaps, the only kind worth having. My name is Patricia Hayes. This is Patricia's Porch, where I believe the most honest conversations are the ones that actually change us. If this reached you today, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe below. I am here every week, and I would love to keep this conversation going. Thank you for sitting with me. I will see you next time.